Joining us live from New Brunswick, New Jersey is Noura Erakat. You're a human rights lawyer and associate professor at Rutgers University. As a human rights lawyer, then, how are you looking at this?
I'm looking at atrocities on an unparalleled scale in recent years. And I think that what we have to remember is that outside of the bean counting of the numbers of dead now, that we have to consider the greatest crime that's undergirding this situation, which is the context. And that greatest crime is an ongoing situation of settler colonialism, the longest military occupation, 56 years now, and a condition of apartheid, which has been concluded by several human rights organizations and Israeli human rights organizations, which is a crime against humanity. As we are thinking about how do we respond to this crisis, it's so important not to focus on the immediate crisis at hand, but to deal with the root cause and to consider what do we need to do not only to fix this situation, but to end it once and for all. Because the truth is that after this situation is over, war will continue against Palestinians day in and day out, shaping that structural violence will continue to shape their daily lives.
Look, human rights clearly haven't been a guiding principle for the last 3 days in anything that we've seen transpire, whether it's in southern Israel, whether it's now in Gaza. What do you think happens next?
What happens next, I think we're on the brink of seeing an imminent war that's going to grow even further. Israel has made clear, its general got on the air and said clearly that Palestinians in Gaza are human animals. He is priming an audience to dehumanize Palestinians, to expect that they're going to die, to accept that they're going to die, if not applaud their killing and their mass death. Now there's 600 Palestinians who have been killed already. Israel has bombed the Rafah border crossing, the one crossing that they don't control between Egypt and the Gaza Strip, which means that not only are Palestinians denied a humanitarian corridor, they will be trapped within the Gaza Strip. We are looking at increasing amounts of violence, but also an unrestrained Israel that is now getting a carte blanche from the international community rather than hold Israel to account and force them to contend with the apartheid situation that they have kept in place, the open air prisons that they have trapped Palestinians in. They are instead pledging to support Israel militarily, that they are issuing statements of support. They are fomenting war. And the international media that has failed to consider the context of the situation is also part of the problem.
I suppose this also highlights the limits on international law, which is that, you know, contrary to domestic law, there's almost no one to enforce it.
Well, the truth is that all law is imbricated with politics, and international law in particular is only as strong as the political will that exists to enforce it. Note that the European Commission, within only 3 days, has already sought to reevaluate its funding for the Palestinians in the amount of 691 million euros. And yet, in the decades of Israeli apartheid, and in the 3 years since the reports concluded that Israel oversees an apartheid regime, there has not been a single evaluation of military aid to Israel, financial aid to Israel, or even the arms deals to Israel. And so we have to take into account that no law enforces itself. That's not how the law works, and not international law. All law must be enforced through political will. And so the more political support we see in this moment for a just solution that addresses far more than the current crisis, but also addresses the structure of violence, the more likely we're going to see the law be useful as a tool, not necessarily as a savior.
Do you see a role for the United Nations in this?
The United Nations is the source of the greatest amount of potential to actually end this situation, surely in the UN Security Council. But we know that the U.S. has used its veto power within the Security Council to issue no less than 43 vetoes, undermining all efforts to restrain Israel or to achieve an international solution to the condition of Palestinian subjugation, ongoing Palestinian subjugation. And so unless we see the popular will of United Nations member states gathered to overcome a UN Security Council veto, there is little that they can do, although all states individually, together regionally, can push now to restrain Israel, to enforce a ceasefire, to then move in the direction of lifting the siege, ending the occupation, dismantling Israel's system of apartheid.
And Noura Erakat, human rights lawyer and associate professor at Rutgers University, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.